Okay, we're live. Welcome, everyone. I'm Jamie Paradadkins, Chief Operating Officer of the Aesthetic Medical Buying Group, Med Results Network. And on behalf of myself and our partners at Podium, we thank you for joining us today. To get started, I will dive into the presentation in a minute, but I want to give you a little bit of context about why we're all here today, a little bit about Podium, and what I think we are here for as a group. It's no secret that most of us probably think we're better at marketing than we are, or maybe you're like me and you know a little bit about a lot of things, but with so many ways to communicate, email, text, Facebook, Instagram, so many options right now. If you're like me, you're too overwhelmed to learn what might work best for your business. And I think this definitely applies to healthcare and more specifically to the aesthetic medical arena. So, in my mind, with the added pressure of competition for cash pay patients, it's become increasingly difficult to attract and retain new patients without a solid strategy to consistently communicate to your patients and remain top of mind or relevant. So I'm sure you've all heard the statement that 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customer base. This is true. But it's only true if you're nurturing those relationships that you already have and successfully communicating with your patients. So when I say successful communication, that means actually getting through to your patients. And today, the most successful form of communication is through text messaging, which, believe it or not, has a 98% open rate. So I think emails and calls simply aren't going to cut it anymore. And that's especially because text is now becoming the preferred method of communication for everyone. And that's even true in healthcare and aesthetic medicine. So one of the reasons we partnered with Podium was exactly for the reason that they deal specifically with text messaging, and they're the leaders in SMS communication. Today, Podium's been kind enough to share two of their brightest with us to take a deeper dive into the impact of SMS marketing and to explain how you guys can use it effectively in your business. So I'm proud to introduce Isaiah Rendario. He's going to take us into the first part of today's presentation. He is the product marketing manager for Podium Campaigns. And a little bit about Isaiah, he spends his time helping local businesses tap into the power of SMS marketing. And he does that to strengthen customer relationships, to increase customer LTV, which you all know is a lifetime value and very important in aesthetic medicine, and also to drive more revenue. Following Isaiah, we're going to introduce Mark Hansen, and he's the Senior Director of Field Marketing for Podium. He also leads the territory marketing strategy at Podium. And prior to that, Mark spent 10 years leading digital and field marketing teams and functions at trailblazing software companies like Workfront and Banafi. And he's a music junkie, he's an avid traveler, and he enjoys spending time with his wife and 3 young children. So we're very excited to have Isaiah and Mark with us today. One last thing before I turn it over, a little bit of housekeeping. I want to encourage everyone who is in attendance today to participate at any time during the presentation. And you can do that on your control panel. There's an option to chat, so feel free to type in questions. We'll either get to those somewhere in the middle of the presentation or definitely by the end of the event. And we also have a wealth of information to share with you. Isaiah and Mark have been kind enough to provide some downloadable resources and also some links that you can access during or after the event. So we will direct your attention to those links and downloadable resources as we move along. But with that said, we hope you enjoyed today's presentation, and I want to turn it over to Isaiah.
Awesome. Thank you for that awesome introduction. I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen. Just give me one moment. Can I confirm that you can see this?
Yeah, looks good.
We're good to go. Awesome,
Yep.
awesome. All right. So before we dive into this, I just wanted to open up this presentation by starting with a pretty interesting question. For many of you who are doing email marketing today, when was the last time you got a 98% open rate on a marketing email? Now, I don't think it's much of a hint here to say that it was probably never. And for the most part, this is a sentiment that rings true for the majority of local businesses that we work with. And it's something that we hear over and over again in our conversations in the field. The reality is, while email marketing can be a highly effective engagement tool, it's not necessarily something as pervasive like our mobile devices, which typically live at arm's length, whether that be in our pockets, our purses, or even just on top of our desks. And yet, something as new as SMS marketing can still be daunting to us marketers and local business leaders. And that's why for today's webinar, we're going to be talking about how do you conduct SMS marketing correctly so that you can effectively leverage this channel to increase customer lifetime value and drive more revenue. But really quick, here we go for the agenda. Again, it's a pretty jam-packed schedule. What we're going to do is start with a quick comparison around the merits of text versus email marketing. From there, we're going to talk about everything you're going to need to know about compliance, how to build your opt-in list, the do's and don'ts of SMS marketing, best practices, and then to close out the session, we're going to have a good chunk of time to answer any questions that you have. All right, Mark, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Yeah, let's dive in. We've all been in a meeting that could have been an email, right? And these days, if we look at the next slide, it really could have been a text, right? We've all received an email that could have been a text. It's the fastest way from point A to B in many cases. This is what we do all day long, talking on our phones through text with our friends and family, right? And your patients are no different. Breaking it down though, SMS marketing or short message service or text marketing, right, is the practice of using text messages really to convert leads and keep your patients engaged, right? So it's an emerging channel in many ways, not only for one-to-one communications, which we're going to talk about, but also for campaign level kind of mass communications and promotions. And that's what we want to focus on. As a general rule of thumb, messages are about 160 characters or less, and there are really multiple ways to use the channel. Again, today we're going to focus on those promotional offers like, maybe events, right? Or discounts and deals, right? Things like updates to your service hours or business updates, and then really diving into how do you grow your business through campaign level marketing. If we look at the next slide, let's take a look at maybe email by the numbers and look at a contrast here. So on average, email marketing, right, gets an average of like an 18% open rate, right? And typically it's about a 2.6 average click-through rate. So you're not getting a ton of engagement. And I've ran email marketing programs and teams for over a decade. It's true, these rates are often terrible, especially if you have large lists to promote to. First thing I do in the morning when I wake up is I look at my phone, open up my email, and it's delete, 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 delete. I get a lot of spam, right? Think about how much time you or your team are spending on promotional emails, newsletters, and of that sort. For what? What kind of engagement are you really seeing, right? If we look at the next slide, let's look at direct mail. Direct mail is a pretty popular channel in consumer industries, right? A lot of consumers get deals and coupons and offers in the mail every day. According to the Direct Marketing Association, the average open rate is about 42%, which is okay. And the average response rate in contrast is often below 2%, right? So again, think about how much time your team is spending on this channel and what kind of budget you're spending on direct mail. Outside of building a brand connection with your practice, what kind of direct return are you getting? If we look at the next slide, this is probably my all-time favorite slide. In contrast, let's look at text messaging by the numbers. So text messages get an average of a 98% open rate, right? 95% of texts get open within 3 minutes, which is crazy. Texts get an average of like a 209% higher response rate than phone, email, or even Facebook Messenger. And the coupon redemption rate, if you're offering deals and incentives, it's often 10 times higher than other types of coupons, right? So SMS is an incredible channel to layer in, to add to your marketing mix to drive sales and patient acquisition. If we look at the next slide, it's not only one of the more effective channels, it's also cost effective, right? So as a healthcare business or a practice that you're running, looking at the data here, compared to the average like digital advertising programs or paid social programs, SMS campaigns are extremely low cost to run. if you're looking at like 10 cents right there on your screen. So this allows you to really drive new leads, increase your patient lifetime value, and acquire new patients in a scalable way at very little cost. And like email, SMS marketing really is trackable and provides valuable insights to your patient behavior. There's pretty strong reporting, which we're going to talk about, where you can look at open rates and click-through rates and kind of the macro details there. Unlike email, though, it reaches your patients where they want to be reached, right? Which is instantly and in a communication method that they spend most of their time communicating with their friends and family on. So I'm going to turn it over to Isaiah. Let's talk about a little bit of how it's being utilized today.
Totally. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, so while the numbers don't lie, astonishingly, we find that text is still an underutilized channel of marketing, with only about 12% of local businesses who are actually using SMS to market to their customers today. And as you can see from this graph here in front of you, old school channels like print and email still take that lion's share, right? And that's really because businesses today are largely still using the same channels they were in 2005. And that can be said across a large variety of industries, right? It's the way it's always been, and it's what they know. But texting really reaches customers where they want to be reached. We recently published a study earlier this year, and our data showed that text messaging is actually preferred by consumers 2 times more over other forms of communication. So just imagine the implications for a local business who chooses to adopt and integrate texting as part of their overall marketing mix. It can really provide those businesses with a competitive edge. And just to double down on this point, consumer expectations are changing rapidly. Today's modern consumer expects convenience, speed, personalization, and human-like connection. And with the companies like Netflix, Uber, DoorDash, Hulu, and others disrupting almost every industry, convenience is king. And ultimately, that means texting. In fact, we find that over 65% of consumers think texting makes working with a local business more convenient. So now, if we put all the pieces together, what does this mean if you're a medical spa? Well, to put it succinctly, it means converting more patients through text. It means more subscribers, more appointments, and most importantly, more engagement, right? Let's go ahead and talk about compliance, Mark.
Yeah, let's dig into compliance, because this is often an area where businesses are maybe hesitant to get started because they maybe don't understand the rules and regulations. So if we look at the next slide, with great power comes great responsibility, right? If we're using a channel like this, we need to be responsible with it. So before getting started, we need to be aware of a few things. So text is more intimate, even more invasive in many cases than other forms of communication. Text messages appear directly on a person's phone, whether they're at home or work or asleep or on a date, right? Or spending time with the family. So because of this, marketers especially have an obligation to use messaging ethically, which means following applicable rules and regulations. And complying with those regulations are really, and following maybe common sense best practices are going to keep you and your patients happy. And that's what we want, is we want to build a healthy business here. Okay, so let's talk about the TCPA. If we look at the next slide, what is the TCPA? In the US, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, it was really put in place to protect consumers from spam, including unwanted calls and texts, right? In other countries, there are similar protections in place, right? In Australia, there's the Australia Spam Act. Canada has CASEL, Canada's anti-spam law. These laws require organizations to collect what's called express written consent, right? Documented consent that you can message them in an outbound way before sending out promotional text messages. A text message is considered promotional or marketing or advertising in nature if it's for the purpose of advertising the availability of your product or service, or encouraging your recipient to make a purchase, right? So there's a distinction, though, if we look at the next slide, between what is described as transactional messaging and promotional messaging, right? And many of you on the call, there's a lot of businesses today that may be using transactional text messaging in their business, which is totally fine, right? And in fact, Podium allows you to do both sides of these things, transactional and promotional. So let's talk about what the difference is, right? Many practices use one-to-one messaging for patients for operational, these transactional use cases like an appointment reminder, right? So they've went to your website, maybe they booked something and you're sending out a text message to say, hey, we want to remind you about your appointment tomorrow. Click here to confirm or something like that. What about collecting a Google review? That's also a transactional message after the fact, right? So after they've completed their appointment, you could send them a text message to request a public review on, for your location on Google. Maybe you're collecting internal NPS survey feedback, right? You want to know how can you improve your products or services after an appointment. That is also a transactional use case that doesn't require that express written consent, right? So that's a different use case. They basically have implied consent and they're not considered promotional. Your patient, they've interacted with you for the purpose of doing business with you. And although you might not need that express written consent, you should probably consult with a legal team if you're using that type of channel. Let me give you a couple of personal examples here on maybe the difference, right? So my dentist that I go to, oftentimes I book an appointment, and sometimes I book those appointments on a recurring basis, and it's like 6 months out. I forget, it doesn't make it on my calendar, and I get a reminder a week before and a day before. They used to call me, these robocalls would hit me, and I never would answer, and they would want me to confirm, and I never would reply. And now I respond on text and confirm my appointment. That is transactional, right? And I can even respond and say, hey, I need to, reschedule or something like that, right? On the flip side, so that's transactional messaging. On the flip side, occasionally my dentist will also send out promotions, right? They have an incentive going for the month of March to offer teeth whitening, right? And they've got maybe it's 10% off if you book by the end of March. Those are promotional messages that are different from transactional. And I want to make that clear distinction. This webinar, we want to talk about how to build that promotional engine, right? And what are the best practices there. So again, when you're building that promotional engine, let's use express written consent and a platform that lets you do that. Okay, so let's get into maybe some myths, Isaiah, before we get started into best practices.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So yes, again, SMS marketing is still a relatively new form of marketing. And because of this, I find that there are some common misconceptions. And hopefully in this section, we can clear those up. And the first one being, SMS marketing always gets businesses in trouble. That's false. Second, SMS marketing laws are too complicated to understand. Again, that's false. And then lastly, SMS marketing is spam, and that too is also false. The fact of the matter is, and going back to what Mark said, SMS marketing in a compliant way all boils down to being transparent and only messaging those people who have given you permission to market to them, right? And look, spamming your customers is not only poor practice, but it can also carry serious repercussions. When this is done in a non-compliant way, sending SMS marketing campaigns without that consent can severely damage customer relationships and trust, and it can also lead to fines. And that's why it's so important to take advantage of an SMS marketing tool that not only equips you with tools to quickly and efficiently grow that opt-in list, but also allows you to manage opt-outs and automate taking those people out of those lists when they decide not to receive those messages. And I'll touch upon that a little bit more in just a bit, but let's go ahead and talk about some other best practices. Back to you, Mark.
Yeah. So best practices or pro tips, right? Gather opt-ins at natural touch points along your patient journey. And Isaiah's going to talk about what that means, right? Because there's a lot of different opportunities to build your subscriber list. Again, there's one-to-one interactions that don't have a subscriber list. And then there's these larger incentives and promotions that you can run to a large subscriber list, kind of mass marketing, so to speak, at once, right? But in order to do that effectively, you need proper consent from each recipient on that list, right? So just because they're a subscriber of maybe your newsletter does not mean that you can then text them. They need to opt into your newsletter, your text channel, right? One other thing to mention is that you want to mention your practice's name. Your patient could be subscribed to multiple different business text message campaigns, right? They could be receiving offers from a retailer, maybe their auto dealer, right? And you should mention your practice's name so they know who they're connected with. Alert your patient about possible messaging fees. This is also important, right? They may have messaging fees that are incurred. You can list that. We've all received those texts where they'll include a little bit of information about that right in the beginning. And then after that, you don't need to mention it so much. The frequency also matters. Make it transparent on how frequently they'll receive messages. We're going to talk about what that looks like. And then include an option to opt out, right, of all future texts. And then honor those opt-outs, right? If someone does opt out, don't keep spamming them, right? And we're going to talk about the mechanisms to control that. How do we grow a subscriber list, Isaiah? If we look at this kind of next section here, how do we build that subscriber list?
Totally. So yeah, let's circle back around on actually how do I grow this list of text marketable subscribers? Now, with the many businesses that we work with, a lot of them assume that growing this opt-in list is the hardest part of SMS marketing, but in reality, it really doesn't have to be. There are a number of touch points along your customer journey where collecting an opt-in is natural and even expected. So if you take advantage of them, the list you'll find will actually build itself in a relatively quick manner. And fortunately for you, here at Podium, we offer businesses the largest variety of opt-in entry points so that you can grow an opt-in list, wherever you operate, whether that be, at a physical location in your clinics, online, or even face-to-face when you're having conversations, with them. And this really all starts when a customer lands on your website. An opt-in can be collected if they interact or leave an inquiry in your web messenger or web chat, perhaps after they act with you, or after they leave a review. Another thing businesses can do is set up these customizable online sign-up forms. I'm sure you've seen them before on many websites that you frequent, but these are little forms that say like, hey, sign up for a free consultation or get 10% off your first purchase if you give us your contact information. So that's something that you can do very easily with Podium, have it branded, and it can be easily distributed out as a link or a QR code. So let's say you have a big social media presence or trying to grow that. Well, it's very easy to drop a link to those sign-up forms via social media or by email blasting your current mailing list. And now let's say you have a bunch of physical locations at your medical centers. Well, you can collect those opt-ins there too by having those sign-up forms opened up on a tablet, or maybe it's a laptop. And so there are tons of different opportunities to do that. This is just another slide here that just goes to show like how these sign-up forms can be integrated across the different points of the customer journey, right? From website all the way from transaction to review. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about some do's and don'ts of SMS marketing.
Yeah, so we talked about compliance, we busted some myths. Let's talk about how to be effective, right? As a practice, you want SMS marketing you want to use it to engage your patients and increase that patient lifetime value and ultimately drive more revenue for your business. What you don't want to do is annoy your customers or your patients, right? Or damage your brand. And the real goal is to give your text the feel and value of one-to-one interactions, even though it's going out in a mass marketing sense, right? So there are a few do's and don'ts to get into that. Okay, so the first do is use conversational language, right? One of the biggest turnoffs we see with marketing messages and other forms or other channels is businesses often sound like they're shouting, buy now, offer ends today, right? If you look at the example on the screen here, this is, hey, Sandy, it's Amanda from Aspen Medical Spa. It's time to schedule your next laser hair removal appointment. Please schedule here, right? This is a really great example of it probably was sent to many people. There's a list of 200, 300, 400, 500 people on that list, but they used different tags and plugs in their platform, right, to be able to personalize it and drive new appointments, right? So to appeal to your patients, keep messages lighthearted, short and conversational, just like you see on the screen here, just like you're talking to a friend. Again, your customers, your patients are using this channel all day long to talk to their friends and family, and you're inserting businesses messages into that channel, right? So you want it to also feel like they're talking to a friend. You can even include emojis, right, to keep the conversation personal and informal. And I think that's a smart way to do it. Emojis don't really work in email marketing. I highly recommend them in text marketing. Okay, let's look at the next do. So just because it's not one-to-one doesn't mean it shouldn't sound like it. Do address patients by name, right? Use a messaging system or a platform like Podium, or integrate with a customer relationship management system like a CRM of some sort or a database to drive personalization, right? Personalization is crucial in today's market. Everywhere we look, consumers today expect personalization. It's why we love Amazon. It's why we love Netflix. Not only is it instant and it's on demand, but it's also personalized for me. That's what your patients expect. They want to know and trust the businesses they interact with, and know that you know who they are, right? And address them by name, right? Okay, so let's look at this next do. This one's really important, especially if you have multiple locations in different time zones. It's important to make sure you're cautious of the business hours that you're sending, right? A 4 a.m. text message is not going to make anybody happy, right? Especially if you're building a program and you have a location that's in another state, in a different time zone, and it works for this time zone, but not the next one. Be cautious about when you're sending messages, right? Send text during hours that people are regularly awake and working, and respect your patient's privacy to increase that human-like feel. And this is where platforms are going to be really powerful for you to test and optimize, right? Podium has some businesses that find the most success sending campaigns on the weekends, right? So their customers respond, they have high engagement at 10 a.m. on a Saturday, right? Or high engagement on a Friday afternoon, right? And maybe, for your business, weekdays are better, right? But keep in mind that sending late at night, early in the morning is probably going to drive unsubscribes, right? So you want to send and test optimal times with small groups until you figure out really what works for your business. Daytime text messages are probably going to perform the best. Cool. All right, so let's look at the next do. Do use keep your messages simple, right? Remember that you only have 160 characters or less to work with. You don't have a lot of branding, right? So try not to use complex messaging that really could be misinterpreted. And if you're sharing, information about an event or a promotion, include the dates, and so that your audience has all the relevant information that they need. But keep it simple, right? I think that's the most important part about this channel is conversational, simple, short messages that are easy to interact with. Cool. The next one, Isaiah, let's look at providing value.
Totally. Yeah. So the next thing you're going to want to remember, and just as a rule of thumb, successful campaigns are going to be those that provide very relevant value to a specific target audience, right? If they're general and if you're just blasting out to your entire subscriber base, you might find that your engagement rate's not as high as it could be if you were to take the time to segment those audiences, based on certain characteristics or information about them, right? So it's going to be extremely important that you're taking the time to understand who exactly is the audience you want to send a promotion to, so that you can ensure that those messages resonate. And I'll talk a little bit more about how you can actually use an SMS marketing platform to kind of capture those customer preferences that you can use for segmentation purposes. Moving on to the next one. Our next best practice, this involves making sure to include a call to action or a CTA. A CTA is a method to drive a certain type of behavior. And in my opinion, if you miss the CTA, you're kind of missing the point of SMS marketing. Messages should include a very direct call to action, such as schedule a consultation today, or check out the website for more details, or even reply back with any questions. Moving on to the next one. Next, here we have including a link in your message. Now, this one is extremely important because including a link actually provides a method for SMS marketing tools to track engagement, right? So with Podium, when a recipient clicks on a link, our system is able to capture and measure exactly how many people interacted with that message. And even more importantly, adding links is a great way to remove friction in the customer journey, making it as convenient as possible for that patient to take action, right? And keep in mind though, you're going to want to make sure that the links that you include don't eat up into your valuable character count. So you're going to want to make sure you have a system which automatically shortens those links down for you, right? Moving on to the next one. This one is all about responding in a timely manner. It's important to remember that successful SMS marketing goes way beyond those one-way blasts, right? Customers crave conversations. So the more human feel your communications can carry, the more effective they're going to be. So messages that are responded to, let's say, 7-10 hours later, that doesn't sound like it's coming from a human. It sounds like it's coming from a bot. Whereas two-way messages, when done well, feel like a real conversation, and that's how you're going to improve your chances of conversion. And then just to round out this portion, you're definitely going to want to keep an eye on how your campaigns are performing and monitoring how audiences are responding to your messages. If you aren't getting the engagement you're looking for in the first few promotions, perhaps you're going to have to take a step back and try experimenting with how you are targeting those messages, what language you are using, what promotions you are running, and at what times of the day you are sending those messages out. Again, SMS marketing is different for verticals, industries. So it's all about experimenting with what works best for your business and your customers. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the don'ts.
Yeah, these are important, right? So we have a couple of don'ts here. The first is don't send too frequently, right? You can see the example on the screen. Inundating your patients with messages is going to lead to a lot of frustration, like too many messages, and a lot of stop replies and unsubscribes, right? Hi, Molly, we're running a 10% off Botox sale over and over again is really going to get obnoxious for your patients, and they over and over again or too frequently, multiple times in a day, multiple times in a week, they will unsubscribe, right? So often this has a lot more to do with the content and value of your messages than how often you send them. However, you need to test and optimize the frequency. I think most people will respond to maybe a once a week type promotion and in maybe twice a month type scenario. Doing it daily is likely to drive those unsubscribes pretty high, right? And keep in mind, you can build segments in a platform like Podium. You can have your VIP patients that are often returning patients that return regularly. They have subscriptions or something like that. Those are the ones that you probably get away with messaging more often with new incentives and promotions. The other ones that are maybe less than engaged, right? You want to be careful about how frequently you're sending these messages. So again, test and optimize, test. Okay, the next slide, let's look at Slang. Don't use Slang. What up, fam? We got hella fire deals right now. That is not going to go over well. It doesn't even indicate who this message is coming from. You're going to get unsubscribes from a message like that, right? It certainly increases the casual feel, but it risks the unprofessionalism and potential misunderstandings with your patients, right? So avoid acronyms, avoid wordplay, or anything that could be misleading for your patients. You want to be professional and yet conversational in this channel. Okay, so avoid slang. Let's look at the next one. Don't use all caps. This is one of my favorite examples. It's a real example. Actually, if you look at the screenshot here, it's the New York City 911 department activated text messaging for victims who potentially couldn't call. They were in a scenario that they needed to text, which is a brilliant way to use this channel, right? But if you look at the actual text feed, someone was testing it out to see if it actually worked and realized they were really only to find out that 911 just screams at them in all caps. And unless your patients like being shouted at, it's probably a bad idea to use all caps in your messaging. Again, a funny real life example, but something I've received, I've been on the receiving end of like full caps type text campaigns, and it's definitely, it feels like they're shouting. So, okay, let's look at the next don't. Don't forget to identify yourself. Want discounts? Just click this very unsettling link, spam.virus.com. Also a bad idea, right? Your patients could be subscribed to multiple lists. I'd figure out creative ways to identify yourself with each successive messages, right? You're going to use this list or this newsletter, this channel over multiple months, ideally, and you want to kind of switch it up. So you might try, hey, this is Amanda at Aspen Medical Spa. We're so glad that you joined us for your Botox treatment. Just switching it up so where you can identify yourself but not make it redundant is the thing you want to do here. Okay, the next don't. We've hammered this home quite a bit, but don't ignore the opt-in and opt-out rules, right? Incompliance is going to undermine trust and damage your reputation. Remember that you really only should message patients in a mass marketing sense when they have opted in and subscribed to your text channel, and respect their decisions. If they opt out, that's okay, right? You still can grow that list with people who are highly engaged with your text channel. Okay, last but not least, don't sound like a mass text, right? Greetings, valued customer, want deals or specials. As we mentioned, your messages could be going out to 700 people at once. It doesn't have to sound like it, right? Let's talk personalization. So if we look at the next slide, there's a lot of different ways you can get creative and smart in your marketing to personalize your messages, right? Today's consumers crave personalization in all their brand interactions. We've talked about this. You want them to feel like they're interacting with a real person at your business, and that person is contacting them and them only, right? If you want your threads, your text threads, to feel like individual actions, it's critical to really leverage some sort of like integrated personalization, whether you're using a platform that has personalization tags like Podium, or you're integrating with the CRM. You can do this by, think about like include their name. What about their birthday? You could have segments that you run specials for just for the month of their birthday, right? Like Botox treatment is on sale this particular month for the February birthdays, right? Something like that. Think about their location, think about their last service or purchase. Think about seasons and holidays, previous feedback. That's a powerful way to build a VIP list. Think about the people, your patients who go out of their way to leave positive reviews on Google for your business. You can tag them in a system like Podium and create that VIP segment, right? These are going to be the most highly engaged. If they've left positive reviews for your business, they're likely to be the ones you want to continue messaging with unique deals and offers, right? Maybe they've given previous feedback. Maybe they've had a compelling website journey. These are all different ways that you can personalize your campaigns and segment campaigns, different offers, different messages for different segments using this channel. Okay, let's talk about a little bit what good looks like, Isaiah.
Totally. Thanks, Mark. So yes, in this section, let's talk about some good examples of text marketing campaigns. And before we get into this section, just wanted to preempt that in reality, there are countless of valuable SMS marketing use cases that we see, being used every day. But for this discussion, we're just going to focus on 4 use cases that we've identified to be a perfect fit for retail healthcare businesses like yours. So let's go ahead and dive in. So starting with the first one, here we have our classic direct incentives. This one is pretty straightforward. These ones are going to be your buy one, get one offers, your 20% off coupons, and your take $10 off your next treatment. These are going to be promotions that are associated with a specific financial incentive to boost demand for whatever products or services you have on sale. These are promotions that are typically the first thing that comes to mind when we talk to people about SMS marketing. Down below, if you look at the example, you can see that this medical spa is providing a buy 3, get 1 free promotion. And what I love about this particular message is that they're applying those best practices that we mentioned earlier. They're greeting them by name. They're identifying themselves and their business. And most importantly, they're including that CTA with a link so that they can track that engagement, right? And then if we go on to the next one, here we have your available appointment notification. So again, using a text marketing solution to let patients know that you have some availability when demand is high. You can tweak this promotion a little bit. I know that in the in the medical spa space, there is often the need to re-engage previous customers on treatments that require regular upkeep. So this is, again, a good tool to re-engage those previous patients, getting them to come in on a more regular basis. If we move on to this next one, I want to, so this one's giveaways, or what I like to call kind of a good way to capture information on customer preferences. So if we loop back around to what I was saying earlier, that targeted messages are typically going to lead to a greater response. And this giveaway promotion I'm showing is a great way to do that. So this was actually an example that was taken from one of our customers where they've created this giveaway. And basically how it works is they choose out of the options shown in the message. And based on those options, they're able to now put them in different segmented groups and engage those customers with future promotions based on the preferences that they left in this message, right? So that's a really powerful way to kind of get your huge audience into segments based on what they want, so that you could send them very targeted promotions that, in my opinion, you'll see greater engagement from. Right. And then last but not least, so not all promotions need to be about providing a financial incentive. SMS marketing is really powerful for also nurturing customers. Maybe you have customers who are not so ready, to make the jump or to purchase from you. Well, here's a use case that's not so much providing a discount, but it really helps with building that customer trust, and that's with educational and informational promotions, right? This one here below, this one's giving them a beauty tip of the week. Awesome. And then last but not least, before I hand it back to Mark, I just wanted to take a moment to spotlight a success story of how one of our customers are using Podium campaigns today. This right here in front of you is Pureveda Body and Mind Spa. They are an aesthetic medical spa in Florida, and they've been using campaigns now for, I believe, about 5-6 months, and they've already seen great success, right? So to just give you some context, this company leveraged our campaigns tool to drive appointments and bookings during their Memorial Day sale. In total, they sent out 2 campaigns reaching about 3,000 subscribers. And when you look at the outcome of these efforts, you can see that they saw tremendous engagement with a total average click rate of 7.3% and a total of 80 responses. And what's even more important is ultimately they were able to drive over $20,000 in revenue for their business in just 2 days. And again, this is a really great story that effectively illustrates how impactful SMS marketing can be. If you look just down below from a quote that Julie Davis, the owner, said to us, she said, "We ran a campaign for Botox treatments and set a payment request once they expressed interest. They were prepaying on their account to get the deal. And from that campaign, I put $20,000 in the bank over 2 days. Why would a business not do that?" Awesome.
That's pretty compelling. Right. I think it's impactful how quickly they built their subscriber list too, right? In 3 months, around 4,000 opt-ins to be able to segment and message. It doesn't have to take that long to build your subscriber list to then take advantage of this type of offer. Especially Pureveda is using multiple Podium products on the transactional side. So they have all these opt-in entry points after every service. They have repeat patients. They're collecting Google reviews and requesting payment, and they're also collecting that opt-in for future SMS marketing messages, which is pretty powerful and a very compelling use case here. So I think Jamie put a link in the chat there for if you'd like to read more about the Pureveda use case and their success with Podium. Go ahead and click that link and read a little more. We've got just a few more slides left, and we'll open up for Q&A. But text marketing is not as uncommon as you might think, right? It's an emerging type of channel, but I think about multiple industries that I personally have interacted with, like my auto dealer that I bought my truck from, and I take that, I get service, oil changes and things like that at this dealership, and they send me regular messages offering those types of appointment. Hey, we have appointments that just opened up. If you need an oil change, or it's about time for your next oil change, right? And I take advantage of those campaigns. My local carpet cleaner did a campaign during the holidays and offered, like, clean 4 rooms, get 1 free type of incentive that I took advantage of. And then again, my local dentist, right, also uses this type of channel to offer teeth whitening and other types of services. So, not all SMS marketing tools are made equally. This is an emerging channel for a lot of local businesses. And with Podium Campaign, businesses are able to really build and manage opt-in lists easily and use targeted offers to engage their patients via messaging, right, in a mass marketing sense, and then report on those efforts. I think that's incredibly powerful. Podium Campaigns is really built for local SMS marketing, providing exactly what you need, really, to simply build, test, and send and report on that promotional opportunity and activity. And it maximizes all of your, as Isaiah mentioned, we have the largest variety of opt-in entry points, right? Allowing really every patient interaction to be an on-ramp for you to grow an engaged and compliant subscriber list and your SMS database. If we look at the next slide, if you're not familiar with Podium as a complete platform, the campaign solution works beautifully with the entire rest of the platform, right? So Podium is really a system that allows you to power patient conversations that convert again and again and conveniently from a single inbox. It's built to improve every stage of your patient life cycle. So you can engage with the right patient through the right channel at the right time, and then start more conversations with patients searching for your products and services, conveniently convert them, right, to those conversations into appointments and purchases, and then even transact through mobile payments, right? And then finally, retain and grow brand loyalty, and then gather patient insights and build advocates publicly through online reviews. So there's so many different ways that local businesses are driving growth in their business through these multiple elements of the Podium platform. If we look at the next slide, today Podium works with well over 100,000 small businesses and multi-location businesses in healthcare. And we reach 1 in 3 cell phone users in the US. So it's a pretty impactful channel to be leveraging. We're helping local businesses like yours and practices like yours to acquire new patients, increase patient engagement, compete with a modern and on-demand experience, and then improve speed and efficiency for your staff. Okay, so if we look at the next slide, if you'd like to learn more about SMS marketing as a channel, you can go to the bit.ly there, or click you can actually download it on the webinar console here. bit.ly/SMS guide is the ultimate guide to SMS marketing. And in a moment here, I also have a YouTube series that I'd be happy to share if you'd like to watch more best practices around SMS marketing. I'm going to hand this over to Jamie for Q&A.
Perfect. Okay, bear with me. Oh, there we go. So we had just a couple questions come through during the presentation. First of all, before we even dive into Q&A, I want to thank you both. There's so much information here. I know I've certainly learned a lot, and I hope our attendees have as well. The first question that I got earlier on was, I already have an email list. Can we send SMS marketing messages to those patients?
Yeah, so we talked about this a little bit, but if you have subscribers already, right, on like an email channel, it does not mean that you can automatically, even if you have their phone numbers, you cannot automatically start mass messaging them through SMS marketing. You need them to opt in. That express written consent is really important, that we talked about. So a lot of creative ways that outside of like those different entry points, like collecting a Google review and payments, a lot of local businesses will then add a button or some sort of incentive on their website, on their social media channels, or even in their email newsletter, right? To say, hey, for more discounts, right, subscribe for 20% off, or get something extra special if you opt into the SMS text message, right? I see that with retailers often. when I click ads on like Instagram, for example, first thing I see is get 20% off, enter your phone number, right? That's the type of thing that you might start to leverage with your newsletter if you already have a strong newsletter, email subscribers. But the answer to that original question is no, you can't automatically start texting them without having the opt-ins in place.
Okay. Well, nope. Thank you for that. Second question, if a patient opts out of a campaign message, will that prevent us from sending other messages through Podium?
Yeah, I can take that one. So, you've probably gotten mobile notifications from other businesses before, and within those initial messages, they'll say something like, reply back stop to stop receiving, messages from us. What we do at Podium is a little bit different. When somebody receives a promotional message from Podium, we recommend that if they want to get removed from receiving marketing messages, that they reply with remove. Remove is a keyword that cellular carriers don't track. It's something that we've kind of created as a soft opt-out. And so what that would do is you will no longer be able to receive marketing messages, but you can still communicate with them on any transactional communications that you might have, right? So that's a little bit different than if you were asking them to respond with stop, which would end all communications with a business.
Interesting. Thank you for that, Isaiah. The final question that we got is, how do we know what campaigns to run?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of businesses that will get started and looking for some best practices there. We went through a couple of those use cases here on the webinar, and there's even more use cases if you go ahead and read the Ultimate Guide to SMS Marketing. One of the cool things that Podium is layering into the actual platform is, there's well over 100,000 businesses using Podium and using campaigns, and we're able to pull by industry the best performing campaigns and provide recommendations. So if you're a medical spa, logging into Podium and you're setting up your first campaign, you'll be able to pick from a couple of examples that other businesses are already running with success. And we're going to add more and more of those kind of templatized examples in the platform for those that want to use them.
Totally. And just to add to that too, I was just looking at, some of the customers that we had in this sort of like retail healthcare space. And we actually find that some of the most messages that get sent out from campaigns comes from that industry. And there's tons of use cases that we're gathering every single day. And so what you'll find is actually that template gallery that we have is much bigger than some of our other industries where we haven't seen as much traction. So.
That's great. Well, I don't have any additional questions unless somebody from the audience wants to type in a question. It looks like we've answered all of them. So I think at this point, we will wrap it up. Isaiah and Mark, I just want to thank you so much for joining us here today, for sharing your wisdom about SMS marketing and the importance of it to any type of business, whether you're small or large. I think it's clear that it really enhances your ability to communicate and reach your customers. So thank you again. Just before we go, for all of you who are still on with us, if you check the offers section on your control panel, there is a link there that says See Podium in Action. I want to let you know that as a MedResults member, you have access to exclusive rates. So if you click that link, you can learn a little bit more about the benefit offered to MedResults members. Certainly, if you have questions for Isaiah or for Mark, you can actually reach out to me directly, and I will funnel your questions straight over to these gentlemen. And other than that, we've got one more downloadable file, that Ultimate Guide to SMS Marketing. If you didn't get a chance to click the link, you can certainly download it before we jump off now. But thank you again. We really appreciate your time. And thank you to our attendees who were here with us today. We look forward to seeing you on the next MedResults educational webinar. And thanks to Podium.